Guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I've got a really fantastic guest, Colin Sanburg, and he's a multi-business owner and he's the founder of FinElevate, the MBA-led strategic accounting service. So I love talking to entrepreneurs such as Colin. We're going to talk all about small business, financial playbooks, masterminds, as well as the work that he's doing at FinElevate. So Colin, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you share your story with the audience, and we'll dig right into the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, as it looks today, I've got multiple businesses, but very humble beginnings. So I started in my first business, actually owned by a family member, and went in kind of bright-eyed and young kid. I was 21 and very green, and within a year or so, I was helping with the financial side of the business, and very quickly realized not only was I in over my head, but the company as a whole was really in over its head. Just a really rough financial situation that I found ourselves in, and learned most of what I know now from helping dig the way out.
Yeah, really interesting. I think I was talking to a previous guest earlier, and he was talking about in this day and age, information moves at Twitter speed. Everything's open, pretty much open. I mean, the internet, and you can find things very quickly. So it's very easy to kind of learn in the past. Enron was operating for decades, or WorldCom. All these fraudulent companies, but which is interesting. So you go. So one thing we'll talk about is small business finance from an MBA and not a CPA. That's really interesting. Kind of talk about that slant.
Yeah. So, as we all know, and it's not to knock CPAs do great work. They have a very specific purpose. But a lot of people, if you ask someone a financial question who's a business owner, a lot of them say, well, let me go ask my CPA. And the reality is, if the question's about how to make more money, it's kind of, I like to joke about with lawyers, you don't ask a lawyer how to get a deal done. They'll usually tell you more of how to kill a deal. And that's because it's just they're focused on the risk side of things, and risk is an important element, but it's not everything, right? We wouldn't be in entrepreneurship if we just guided our lives by risk alone. So that's really what the MBA is all about, how to make money. And I went and got an MBA and was probably running the smallest business of anybody in the room. We had people working for AT&T and all the big dogs out there. But the reality is, making money, I always say you should be able to figure it out on the back of a napkin. And that's what I try and do in my companies.
Really, and I love this. Whenever someone takes a unique approach or a slant, it kind of gives you a different angle. It gives you a different edge as well. So one first thing is how your current business, FinElevate, changes the game for accounting.
Yeah, thanks. So, it's interesting from my experience as a business owner, the bookkeeping is always a low value task on the team, right? It's usually given to a front office person, somebody who's, maybe sitting at a reception desk, or an administrative person who doesn't really enjoy it. And that's because there's a perception that it can add value. And I would agree with that most of the time. In my businesses, that's exactly what I found, even though I'm really a pretty financially oriented business owner. And so what we've done with FinElevate that's very different is we have found that if I understand what the goal of the entrepreneur is, and then we have a common language we use called the Fin score that assesses like where their business is based on those goals. So where is your business today in relation to growth, to profitability, to cash flow, and ultimately to an exit, if that's what you're looking for. Then I've got a playbook that we can implement that will actually get you to your goal. If we don't know what your goal is, there's no way we're ever going to get there, right?
What caused you to go back to school once you were already a business owner and pursue your executive MBA?
Yeah, thanks for the question. That's a good one. So to that point, I got into a business, was way over my head, realized that the way we were running the financial side of a business was just not going to cut it. It was never going to.
Yeah. So we were talking about what caused you to go back to school once you were already a business owner and pursue your executive MBA.
Yeah. So the, reality is in a small business, a lot of times it's a bit of an echo chamber. So I had a number of employees, realistically, none of them had a high business acumen. And, to me, it was an opportunity to really go take my small business kind of hard scrabble lessons that I'd been piecing together and take them to a bigger stage and go get my MBA. I mean, I was always really passionate about business and just wanted to be around other business minds and people who cared about it.
Yeah. And what are some things that we're talking about is some game-changing accounting concepts that either you picked up in your MBA that most business owners don't know?
Yeah, I would say the very first one is, really understand which products and services you make money on and which ones you're just going through the motions. I think when you're a small business, especially a startup, it's easy to get caught up in trying to sell anything that anyone will buy. And the reality is some of those things, there's not a lot of providers out there for a reason, right? Maybe it's just not a profitable thing to try and sell. And so your options at that point are either aggressively raise your price to the point you can make some money, or a lot of times it's just to pare down what you're offering and get down to your core of what makes you money. And it's amazing. I mean, even in the MBA program, there were a lot of people working for big, sophisticated companies who just had never thought about business that way. And for me, starting out in a small business that was trying to be everything to everyone, that was one of the breakthrough moments that once we figured that out, we could double down on what we were actually good at, what customers actually were willing to pay us a fair price for. And that changed the economics of our business completely.
And so for the audience out there, a lot of them are, they want to start companies. We'll talk about buying versus founding a company, but what advice would you give other business owners who want to grow their financial knowledge?
Yeah. So the first thing is, I mean, you can see I've got some books behind me. I mean, it's listen to your podcast first and foremost. Just educate yourself, kind of be immersed in this part of business. And I would argue that, one of my early mentors told me a saying, it's been around for a long time, that is, the accounting is the language of business, right? If you don't understand the language in the place that you're existing, you're not going to do very well. And so even if it's not someone's nature, it's not the thing that they're immediately drawn to, you've got to understand it. It's a price to play, if you want to be a real small business owner.
Yeah, I love that. I think you have to understand the language and so that you can speak it and you can communicate it well. The next question is kind of like small business, and kind of you developed on the front lines of a struggling small business like this financial playbook, but you talk about how masterminds, entrepreneurial friendships, and also what led you to your passion for connecting with other entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So when I was in my early 20s, really just right on the heels of the story I told about, getting into the financial side of a business and have no idea what I was doing, I started within a year or so connecting with other entrepreneurs. And that, really changed my life. Surrounding myself with other business owners who were willing to tell me things my employees weren't going to tell me, right? I mean, if you had a bad idea and you're the CEO of a company, employees typically will kind of fall in line. Maybe you'll get one or two that really trust you and that know that you trust them. And they'll kind of, whisper a little bit of a word of caution or hesitation. And I would go to these mastermind groups and somebody would say, I think that idea is stupid. And that was that was shocking, but refreshing. And that's what I love about being around other entrepreneurs and business owners is, from my experience, there is no group of people who will be happier for you, will be more supportive of what you're trying to accomplish. And it's not just for business owners, but especially for business owners who just don't feel like you have a lot of people in your life who really get it.
Yeah, I love that. I just it's sometimes things go through my mind. I'm just like, I'm talking to somebody or they're just different wavelength. I'm just like, they just don't get it, or I don't get them, or they don't get me. I'm just, but that's entrepreneurship, because you have a different way of thinking and viewing things and seeing things. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And then the thing is, this thing where you talk about, masterminds and entrepreneurial friendships change your life, and kind of for the audience out there, struggling, how cultivating your sphere of influence really helps you and propels you.
Absolutely. I now have been involved with masterminds for probably around 20 years. I founded my first one about 15 years ago. I've gone on to help start a few others. And it really becomes to a point where you almost just want to spend your time around other entrepreneurs. The perfect relationship in my life, friendship, is another entrepreneur, and my wife likes, their spouse. That's the dream, right? But it's to your point. It is, hey, sometimes it's going to be COVID times, and challenges are going to hit you in the face, and you have no idea what to do about it. And being around other entrepreneurs who you feel their support, like they want you to win. And, they're not going to blow smoke. They're not going to tell you things that are unrealistic. But at the same time, sometimes we're being too hard on ourselves. And another entrepreneurs will say, hey, give yourself credit. You're doing a great job, or you're doing this really well. So that support and that uplifting influence in your life is, to me, no matter what you're trying to accomplish, you have to be supported with people around you.
Yeah. I've been studying. So, like, for example, I studied Tom Brady, and basically, his wife basically cleaned out everything, eliminated all distractions so he could just focus on football, being the best at it. And then, other influencers, like their wife kind of creates barriers for like kind of the naysayers, and shields them from negative energies and, detractors. And, kind of, you need to cultivate these things where you just eliminate and things that will bring you down or wear you down. Hugely important. So, kind of shifting gears now, why should you talk about buying a company versus founding a company? What are the differences, advantages, disadvantages? And then we'll talk about, every way you found to do business as well.
Yeah. So great question. So, I went down a path actually in the last couple of years, very intentionally looking to buy a business. I've bought into a couple other businesses before. And in general, I would say that if all things were equal, I would rather buy a business. The reason is because most businesses, it's that initial, market product fit that is such a challenge. That's where so many businesses fail. And I would even argue that a lot of businesses, maybe they look like they're going to survive for a little while, but in reality, they're always kind of lagging behind because there's just not enough of a fit. So buying an existing business is a fantastic option because by definition, it's already going to have revenue. You're going to pay for it based on its profitability. And what do we really want as business owners, right? We want a very profitable business, preferably one that doesn't demand as much from us. So if you're buying a business, by definition, you haven't been there before. You haven't been in the business. And so whatever you can do on top is adding to the business rather than the only way it knows to make money.
Yeah. There's a really great book I was recently finished, Buy Then Build.
Yep. Walker Dybel. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because, you study like Microsoft and Google and Facebook, and they're Amazon as well. And they're acquiring these companies to help so that they don't have to rebuild the existing infrastructure. They acquire them and bring it in, and then basically use those resources. M&A, right? Mergers, acquisitions.
Yeah, and I've actually gone through Walker's course. He has a program called Acquisition Lab that I'm a member of. Yeah. And that is a fantastic book. It's the best book out there in terms of, buying as a small business owner and the thought process. And interestingly, reading that book, going through his program, I'm a huge believer in that concept. The one caveat is that what are you going to do if the business that you really want doesn't exist, right? And his entire premise is that, the fact that the business doesn't exist is probably a sign that maybe it's not a good business. Maybe it's not realistic. I think that's probably true a lot of the times, but it's not true 100% of the time. And that's why I ultimately started my new business from scratch for the first time rather than buying something existing.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of if you're like starting in a very brand new category, like if you're early, like social networks like Facebook, or like kind of the sharing economy like Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, like these you had to create those marketplaces. I mean, once you're starting to scale, then you can start to acquire companies that help you, with logistics or data analytics, different things. Really interesting question, or very interesting topics. You also talk about multiple businesses and every way you found to do it wrong. What do you mean by that?
Well, and so specifically, I would say in my career, I've been doing this long enough now, about 20 years. I've screwed up everything every way you could imagine, right? I think most of us who are being honest and and have any amount of experience would probably admit some version of that. I think what I intended with what I sent you originally is, especially for the bookkeeping side of the business, the accounting side, which is what my new business is startup is intended for. That is something that's incredibly challenging, and businesses just can't find a valuable way to do something that historically has been very low value, like doing the books. And so, yeah, I've tried every different way, employee, do it myself, small firm, big firm, 1099, outsource CPA, on and on and on. And there are unfortunately a lot of things in life work like this, but there's like 1,000 ways to get it wrong and maybe 1 or 2 to get it right.
Yeah. How can people contact you, follow you, reach out to you, check out your work, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can look up my company, which is FinElevate. So it's your financial elevation. And that is www.finelevate, elevate.com. Or you can look me up on LinkedIn, just, Colin Sanburg or FinElevate.
Yeah. And for all the audience, let's thank Colin. I really enjoyed this conversation, just talking about entrepreneurship, business owners, and all of his resources will be in the links and show notes. And thanks so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.